What's up, party people? Welcome to my pre-show stream for today. We have a pretty crazy story, not story, we have a crazy show for you today. Unfortunately, and these are honestly my least favorite news days, the rundown is heavy with police brutality stories today. There's one story out of Chicago that, of course, we want to talk to you guys about involving a 13-year-old child, really, who appeared to be unarmed and was shot and killed anyway. Video surveillance was being withheld in Chicago. And finally, the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, said that they would be releasing it. It has been released. I could not watch the full video, but I did watch the relevant portion of it, which was pretty traumatic and pretty devastating. And we're not going to show you that video on the show today. We're going to show you a screenshot of what the 13-year-old boy looked like right before he was shot and killed. And that's the most relevant part of it because it shows that he was not armed. But anyway, we'll give you the details to that story and more. I wanted to talk to you guys about another story that I came across after we did our production meeting today. And I think it's important to update you guys on it because it kind of gives you a sense of what you should look out for whenever you see one of these legacy media outlets like the New York Times reporting on anything foreign policy related. When they use intelligence sources, especially anonymous intelligence sources, and they claim that there's some big threat to US troops abroad or a big threat to United States national security, you should be skeptical. And I certainly was when it came to this story that was published by the New York Times last year that alleged that Russia was paying the Taliban in Afghanistan bounties for dead American soldiers. Now, that story, honestly, immediately came off as something that shouldn't be taken very seriously, mostly because of the fact that really the Taliban didn't need any reason or any other motivation to target US troops in Afghanistan. They had already been doing it, and the Taliban, of course, along with the Afghan people, did not feel that the United States should be there. They felt that the US was essentially, and it was, an occupying force. So the narrative was really, honestly, it was strange. I was skeptical of the story, and when we originally covered it, we told you why. And the update is that the intelligence community is now walking back those claims. And look, I don't know how much of an impact it had on Donald Trump and his ability to get reelected. But at the time when that story was published, it really felt like it was an effort by resistance libs, honestly, to continue with this narrative about Russia, but not just the narrative about Russia. More importantly, this idea that Donald Trump is turning a blind eye to, Russian aggression toward U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. And I remember the Trump administration was like shocked by it. They're like, we know nothing about this. What are you guys talking about? And look, I don't know or care about what the truth is regarding Trump getting briefed on those allegations. What I do know is that the allegation was sketchy from the beginning, and now the intelligence community is backing off of those claims. This was published in the Daily Beast. So if you guys want to read it for yourselves, it's an article titled "U.S. Intel Walks Back Claims Russia or Russians Put Bounties on American Troops." And I'll just read you the most relevant part of this story, which is a statement coming from a senior Biden administration official. And by the way, while I pull this up, just wanted to remind you guys that if you have some super chat questions for me, if you have some super chat comments for me, now is the time to ask, because now is the time when I can basically kind of freely answer your questions without worrying about going to a break or getting back to the show. So this is what the Biden administration released as a statement. They said the United States intelligence community assesses with low to moderate confidence that Russian intelligence officers sought to encourage Taliban attacks, US and coalition personnel in Afghanistan in 2019 and perhaps earlier. So honestly, that's a way. I mean, at first they were like, no, we are sure this is happening. Okay. Putin is encouraging the Taliban with bounties to go after US troops. And now they're like, yeah, I mean, we're not that sure anymore. Like low to moderate certainty, which you know what that means. That means that there was really little evidence, no evidence really, to back up those claims. And look, that's a problem. The reason why it's a problem is because pushing these types of narratives helps to amplify or accelerate conflicts with other countries. Honestly, conflicts that we have no business engaging in. Now, I'm not saying that Russia is an honest actor, that Russia never does anything wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that when you look at the bigger picture and when you look at what the major threats to national security happen to be, and the Pentagon will admit this, the biggest threat to national security is climate change. We're already dealing with a situation in which the West Coast in the United States is dealing with more and more severe droughts. We have a story about that in the rundown today that I can't wait to share with you guys. It's pretty awful. But it just kind of talks about how droughts have gotten more severe and they certainly last longer than previously because of climate change. Food shortages, mass migration, all of those things are a real threat to national security. So when you think about that and what it would take to actually combat climate change, the last thing the United States needs to do right now is engage in more conflict with countries that, whether we like them or not, we're going to have to collaborate with in order to do something about climate change. So that's mostly where I'm coming from on these issues. I'm not one of these people who goes out of my way to do like positive PR for Russia or anywhere else. But I do go out of my way to tell the truth and call out some of the sketchy corporate media narratives surrounding foreign policy. So anyway, all right. So if you guys have any questions, any thoughts, please let me know. You guys have really nice comments that I really, really appreciate. And honestly, kind of, I feel a little embarrassed to read, so I'm not going to read them. But thank you for your nice comments. I definitely prefer them over mean comments, so you guys can go ahead and send me those. But again, now would be a great time for your questions. While I wait for super chats, let me see if any of you... All right, Erica Mitchell says, Anna Salt is exactly why I started watching TYT 10 years ago. Don't ever apologize for being passionate about a topic. I'm that way frequently. Thank you. Yeah, it is kind of frustrating because for some reason, there's this emphasis on people, but I see it more with women, to be honest. So like communicate in a very calm way, like your tone needs to be low. Don't get overly passionate or animated. But that's incredibly hard to do when you genuinely care about these issues. Like, how do you do that? You know, it's not easy. All right. Thank you to LJNS, who says that the whole TYT squad rules. Thank you. Let's see what else. Is there any chance that military reports on climate change move the Biden administration to a more bold climate policy? I mean, I certainly would not rely on the military. Actually, I don't know, but I think it's always a bad idea at this point to just like rely on one government agency or on a group of politicians or even one politician to basically save us from what we're experiencing in this country right now. And I'm going to talk about this more and more, and I'm sure I'm going to get under some people's skin, but what we're missing right now is organized labor, right? And I know that I've said this during my stream yesterday, but that's everything at this point. The reason why you have these lawmakers, yes, including some Justice Democrats, refusing to exercise their power, refusing to use the leverage they have, is because what would be the consequences if they don't? What are the consequences if they don't? Are we going to primary them? Okay, sure, but we primary them and we get another round of progressive lawmakers. What's going to stop them from falling in line the way progressive lawmakers already have? And I'm not trying to say that we only need organized labor and electoral politics doesn't matter at all. I'm not saying that. But I do think that much of the emphasis has been on electoral politics, and just getting people you like elected unfortunately doesn't do enough to accomplish the goals that we have, to ensure that the provisions that we want are included in must-pass bills. Justin James writes in and says, 2024 candidates. Justin, let me just say, I'm going to be 100% real with you guys. I'm putting that thought off as much as possible right now because we just had an election. So again, this is part of the problem, right? Like just this emphasis on like, all right, we just finished this election. What's next? What election are we going to focus on next? Which Justice Democrat are we going to elect next? Okay, we've done that stuff. Like that has been the cycle over and over again. It has not yielded the results that we want. So that's why my head is not at all on the 2024 election, just keeping it real. Stephen writes in and says, hey, Anna, how do you rate Biden's presidency so far? So I want to be fair, obviously, and honest with you guys. I think that it would be unfair for me to say that Biden ended up being as disappointing as I expected. He's a little less disappointing than I expected him to be. There have been areas of improvement, but I also want to caution anyone against falling for the narratives that we're seeing regarding Biden being this new FDR. Biden is nowhere close to FDR. Okay. And what I'm talking about specifically is the economic aspects of what FDR managed to do. FDR didn't just simply pump money into a proposal and then sit back and say like, yeah, our system's great. We just need to pump more money into this. That's not what he did. Because of FDR, we have all of these incredible, important, and popular permanent programs like Social Security, for instance, unemployment insurance. These are things that actually systemically change the game. And we're not seeing that from Biden so far, at least not yet. But in terms of Biden's foreign policy, with the exception of what he claims he's going to do with Afghanistan, disaster. And I've talked about that quite a bit on the show. Goblin Dragon says, would you ever bring leftist YouTubers / streamers on the main show or the conversation? Yes, absolutely. Honestly, I know we have the conversation. I really want to push to incorporate interviews in the main show because in order for me to do the conversation, I can't do the conversation on a regular basis. My workload for the main show is already pretty burdensome. So I want to find a way to incorporate interviews in the context of the main show. And I want to have conversations with different people. I think that it just makes the show better overall. So yes, I'm open to it. And if you guys have suggestions, you can always let me know who you'd like me to talk to. All right. Nina Turner on the way. And I'm glad that you guys brought up Nina Turner because I do think it's important for Nina Turner to get elected. I think it's easier to work with people like Nina Turner, like the Justice Democrats. But I do think that the problem that we're experiencing right now really revolves around the fact that all of the incentives for members of Congress are in the wrong place, right? So I mean, think about the human desire to just go along to get along. I'm not saying that's necessarily what's happening right now, but I mean, if you don't have organized labor backing you up as you engage in these combative debates with corporate Democrats, it's hard to be persuaded to do it. And I just feel like we're seeing progressives kind of fall in line and it's devastating. But once you kind of have a better understanding of how workers were able to secure better working conditions, a minimum wage, and all of that in the past, you feel kind of liberated, right? You feel liberated from the nonsense conversations that take place on social media. You feel liberated from like relying on one or two members of Congress to save you. You feel, at least I feel empowered, understanding that there is another way, and the other way is not only just more effective, but it relies on, honestly, us to socialize, to organize, to work together. Like we have the people, right? The real question is, what are we going to do to ensure that important legislation like the PRO Act passes, so it's easier for workers to organize and easier for them to essentially apply effective pressure on these lawmakers to ensure that they actually represent our best interests as opposed to the interests of corporations and and their corporate donors. Trista writes in and says, hey, Anna, I consider myself a Ronald Reagan / Milton Friedman Republican, but I'm a TYT member because of your reporting. And thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And Trista, I really honestly have a lot of respect for people like you, even though we might disagree politically, because it means that you're at least open-minded enough to listen to the other side. And listen, girl, I'm going to plant that seed, okay? You just keep listening, and I'll tell you through my stories, through, my citations of history, why Milton Friedman's model does not work. If I could recommend a book for you, and maybe you've already read it, but who knows? Naomi Klein's book, Shock Doctrine, is really important because she goes into what Milton Friedman's ideology has done to Latin American countries, what it's done to this country. And you begin to kind of put the pieces together and understand why it is we have a migrant crisis at the border, like all of the things that Republicans claim they care about, for instance. There's a good explanation for it. And I think Naomi Klein just does a fantastic job in discussing that, right? In discussing why we engage in the conflicts we do abroad. It has very little to do with protecting people from human rights abuses. But thank you for that comment. It feels really, really good to know that we have people like you watching the show. All right. I got to go soon. I'm going to give it one more minute. So if you have any more super chat questions, now is the time to ask me. I got to get off pretty soon just so I can allow for the conversation to start its stream. But I just want to say thank you again, as always, guys. I love doing these. It's a lot of fun, and it gives me an opportunity to kind of connect with you one-on-one and answer some of your questions. Anyway, all right, I better log off now. But the show's going to be great. I can't wait to talk to you guys about, oh my God, so many things. Obviously, there are going to be some pretty terrible stories about policing, but one of my favorite stories actually has to do with Bernie Sanders and his disagreement with Rashida Tlaib on the issue of defunding the police. So that story might shock you, but I'm sure you'll enjoy the back and forth and the conversation we'll have. Finally, from Mark, hey Anna, I enjoy the show and I've been watching for years. One thing I truly love is the Anna shimmy. Thank you. I found out yesterday through our Twitch channel that Jordan Yule, who hosts a show for our Twitch channel called Deep Dive with Jordan Yule, does not like shoulder shimmies. So I feel like I'm going to be a little more self-conscious about it. But since you like it, I'll do it more. Okay. Anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Enjoy the show today and have a good one.